The room was silent, filled with the hum of strange machines. Cold silver walls reflected the pale green glow of alien lights. It was not a hospital, not a prison, and yet it felt like both. The smell of sterilized air stung the nose. Sharp and clean, on the center table lay a human, strapped down with glowing cuffs. His chest rose and fell, steady but tense. He had been awake for hours, eyes shifting, studying the creatures that circled him. They were tall, with pale blue skin and long, flexible fingers. Their eyes glowed faintly yellow, and every movement they made was careful, precise. They were biologists, scientists from a world far beyond Earth. To them, the human was not a man but a subject, something unknown to be studied. Their voices whispered in clicks and tones, though a translator orb hanging in the air turned it into plain words. "Strange bone density," one alien muttered, sliding a scanning tool over the man's arm, stronger than iron alloy at certain points. Another tapped on a glass screen. "Numbers running fast. Look at this muscle fiber," she whispered, her long eyes widening. It should not be possible. The human clenched his fists as the tools touched his skin. He did not shout, he did not resist, but his silence was heavy. Filled with challenge, the lead biologist, taller than the rest, leaned closer. He pressed a device against the human's chest, listening to the thundering heartbeat. The screen flashed red and the alien froze. "It is. How big?" he shouted, his voice echoing through the chamber. The others gasped, rushing to see the numbers. The screen displayed the size and power of the human's heart. It pumped with such force that it outmatched creatures twice his size. The alien's hand trembled, his calm broken. "No warrior species we know can match this," he whispered. "Not even close." The human smirked faintly, though the straps dug into his arms. He could not understand their language without the translator, but he knew the look in their eyes, fear mixed with awe. Another test began. They brought a machine with thick metal grips and ordered the human to hold them. At first he did not move, staring at their glowing eyes. Then slowly, he closed his hand around the grips. The machine whirred, lights flashing as it measured his strength. The biologists expected the bars to bend slightly, but the numbers spiked. The metal cracked, alarms beeped, and the machine gave a sharp hiss as smoke rose from its core. The human had broken the test. "Impossible," an alien whispered. "Their size is small, their structure thin, but the power." She shook her head. "It is unnatural." The lead scientist turned to his team, his voice heavy. "Write everything down. Do not lose a single detail. This discovery could change the order of the stars." The human's eyes flickered from one alien to another. He could not hear every word, but he felt it. The weight of their fear, the shift in their voices. They did not see him as weak anymore. They saw him as something dangerous, something that did not fit their science. Hours passed with test after test. Needles tried to take his blood. Scanners tried to measure his nerves. One alien cut a strand of his hair, only to watch it resist their blades like wire. The more they studied, the more their hands shook. One young alien biologist, her skin a lighter shade of blue, leaned closer. Her voice was softer than the rest. "He is not what we thought," she whispered to herself. "He is more." Her glowing eyes met the human's for a moment, and something passed between them. Not fear, not hatred, but recognition. The human shifted, his chains rattling softly. He whispered under his breath, his voice calm but firm. "You won't break me." The translator orb caught the words and spilled them into the air. The aliens froze, silence falling heavy in the lab. The lead biologist's eyes narrowed. He stepped back, his hand shaking as he set the scanner down. His voice was tight with unease. Then perhaps, "It is we who will break." The machines hummed louder, the air colder. In that sterile lab under the alien lights, the galaxy's first whisper of fear was born. Not of an empire, not of an army, but of a single human lying chained on a table. And for the first time, the aliens realized they might have captured something far bigger than they ever imagined. The human sat upright now, though still bound in glowing cuffs. His breathing was steady, his eyes sharp, watching every alien movement in the cold lab. The first round of tests had left the biologists shaken. Their machines were cracked, their numbers broken, their science trembling. Yet the lead biologist ordered more. He was determined to push this strange creature further. A massive chamber opened at the far end of the lab. Its walls were lined with strange glowing panels, and in the center stood a device like two heavy pillars connected by rods of pure alloy. This will measure absolute force, one alien declared, her voice echoing with a nervous tremor. No being has ever reached its maximum, not even our warriors. The human was led inside, the cuffs still tight around his wrists. 2 guards pressed him toward the device, but he did not resist. He only stared at the machine with a faint smile, as if he already understood what was about to happen. "Grip the rods," the translator orb said, repeating the alien command. The human flexed his fingers slowly, then wrapped them around the cold metal. The biologists stood behind a thick glass shield, whispering to each other. At first nothing happened. The human's arms looked calm, his shoulders steady, then his muscles tightened, cords of strength rising beneath his skin. The machine began to hum, numbers climbing. 7 units, one alien called, her voice tense. 8, 9, no 10. The hum grew louder, the rods vibrating under the force. The human's jaw clenched, his eyes burning with determination. Sweat trickled down his temple, but he did not stop. His grip grew tighter, harder, until the sound of grinding metal filled the chamber. The machine wailed, sparks flying from its base. The numbers shot past the expected limits, climbing into unknown territory. 20 units, the biologist shouted in disbelief. "That is double the strength of our trained soldiers." Suddenly, with a violent crack, the rods bent inwards, the alloy screaming under the pressure. Smoke burst from the device as warning alarms rang across the lab. The human released the rods and stood still, breathing hard but steady. His eyes locked onto the aliens behind the glass. One scientist covered her mouth, whispering, "No creature of that size should have this power." Another hissed back, "It is unnatural, dangerous. We must stop before he destroys the entire lab." But the lead biologist stepped forward, his eyes glowing wide with obsession. "No, continue the tests. We must know how far he can go, do you not see? This human is rewriting everything we know about biology." The young female alien, the one who had felt something strange in her heart earlier, shook her head. Her voice trembled. "But if he is this strong, what if there are more like him? What if this is normal for his kind?" The silence that followed was heavy. None of them wanted to answer. None of them wanted to admit the possibility that Earth, a world they thought weak, might hide millions of such beings. The human finally spoke, his voice low but carried by the translator orb. "Your machine broke before I did." The aliens froze. Some flinched, others lowered their eyes. That single sentence carried more weight than all their numbers. It was not just strength, it was confidence, will, and defiance, the things their empire feared most. The lead biologist's hands trembled, but he forced a laugh. "You think this means you are powerful?" he said sharply. "You are only one specimen, one body. You are nothing without our science." But even as he spoke, his voice betrayed unease. His eyes betrayed fear. The human leaned closer against the cuffs, the chains rattling as he whispered, "Then test me again, and see what breaks next." The chamber filled with silence, broken only by the dying sparks of the shattered strength machine. For the first time, the aliens realized they had stepped into a dangerous game. Their science had not revealed weakness in this human. It had revealed a power their empire might never control. And outside the lab, far beyond the cold walls, whispers of this secret were already beginning to spread. A rumor that one human could bend alien steel. A rumor that might ignite fear across the stars. The strength machine still smoked in the corner, its twisted rods a silent reminder of what the human had done. The biologists whispered nervously, their long fingers tapping on glass screens. Their leader's face was tight, his glowing eyes restless. The data made no sense, but instead of stopping, he pushed harder. "We will test pain tolerance," the lead biologist said, his voice sharp. "No creature can resist the agony field. If the human breaks, we will know his limit." The chamber was prepared again. This time the walls glowed with red light. Thick coils of energy wound around the floor. The air itself seemed heavy, humming with unseen power. The guards brought the human inside, his cuffs glowing tighter around his wrists. The translator orb floated above his head. "You will stand here. You will endure if you collapse. The test is complete." The human narrowed his eyes, his jaw set, and without a word, he stepped into the center. The aliens activated the field. At first there was nothing. Then suddenly waves of heat struck him. Burning against his skin, the coils glowed brighter. Shifting from red to white, his body trembled, his muscles straining as if fire crawled under his flesh. An alien scientist scribbled quickly, "Level 1 intensity reached. Subject still standing, level 3. The leader ordered. The chamber grew hotter, the light sharper. The human's knees bent for a moment, but he forced himself upright. His fists clenched so tight his knuckles went white. His teeth ground together, sweat dripping down his neck. The young female biologist leaned closer to the glass, her voice trembled. He should be screaming by now, but the human did not scream. He lifted his head slowly, his eyes burning with defiance, and stared directly at them through the glass. Level 5, the leader barked. Desperate to break him, the chamber roared. Arcs of energy lashed across his body. His skin reddened, steam rising from his arms. The cuffs glowed dangerously, yet still he stood, shaking but unbroken. One scientist gasped, "No warrior survives this without collapse." "How is he?" Her words died when the human straightened his back. His shoulders lifted, his breathing deep and slow, and in a low voice. Carried by the translator orb, he whispered, "You call this pain?" The chamber fell silent. Only the crackle of energy filled the air. The alien's glowing eyes widened. They were seeing not just endurance, but something more terrifying. Acceptance, level 7. The leader shouted. His pride would not let him stop. The agony field screamed to life. The walls shook, sparks rained from the coils. The human's body jerked, his legs trembling. His breath came in short bursts, but still he stood. His gaze never leaving the glass, the young female biologist's chest tightened. She pressed her hand against the window, whispering, "Enough?" "He will die," but the leader ignored her. His voice cracked as he ordered, "Level 9. The chamber exploded with light. Blades of invisible energy slashed across the human's body. His arms quivered, his knees nearly collapsed. The cuffs cut into his wrists as he pushed against them. His body bent forward as if about to fall. The aliens leaned closer, certain he would break, certain he would collapse like all others before him. But then, slowly, the human straightened again, his back rigid, his chest rising like a soldier's. His eyes burned with something no machine could measure. His lips curled into a faint pained smile, and through the translator orb, his words came heavy like thunder. "Pain only teaches me how to endure." The room erupted in chaos. One alien dropped her tools, another stepped back in fear. Even the lead biologist stumbled, his mouth open in disbelief. The field flickered. Overloaded by his resistance, the coils shattered with a deafening crack. Smoke filled the chamber as the system failed. The human stood in the center, body scarred and steaming, but unbroken. He looked at them all, his voice calm despite the burns on his skin. "You cannot break me." The young female biologist felt her heart race. She had studied countless species, dissected hundreds of creatures, but never in her life had she felt this, the presence of something greater, something dangerous. The lead scientist finally spoke, his voice shaking. "If one human can endure this, then their world may hide an entire army we cannot control." The silence that followed was heavier than the smoke in the air. For the first time, the biologists realized the truth. This human was not their specimen, not their experiment, he was their warning. And the galaxy was not ready for what he represented. The lab was not the same anymore. The smell of smoke from broken machines still lingered in the air. The walls were cracked from the power of the tests, and silence hung heavy over the alien biologists. They had wanted answers, but what they found was fear. The human sat in his cell now, his body marked by burns and cuts. Yet his eyes burned brighter than before. He did not sit like a prisoner. He sat like a soldier resting before battle. The guards refused to look him in the eye. They whispered among themselves, their hands trembling on their weapons. In the observation chamber, the alien scientists argued. Their voices overlapped. Sharp and panicked, "He should be dead," one shouted, slamming her hand on the glass. "Level 9 destroys even our strongest warriors." "But he survived," another answered in a whisper, her voice thin. "And not just survived. He mocked us. He mocked pain itself." The young female biologist who had watched him closely remained silent. Her glowing eyes never left the human. Her mind raced with thoughts she could not share. She had felt something dangerous during the tests, something not written in their data. It was not just his body. It was his will, a fire she had never seen in any species before. The leader slammed his clawed hand on the table, demanding silence. "Enough, we must not panic. This is one specimen, one body. Perhaps he is an outlier. Perhaps his kind are weaker. We will not let fear rule us, but his voice cracked at the end, betraying the truth. He was afraid. One of the younger scientists leaned closer and whispered, "What if he is not an outlier? What if every human is like this? What if Earth holds billions of them?" The room froze. The question none of them wanted to ask had finally been spoken aloud. The leader hissed, trying to regain control. If their species is truly this powerful, then the galaxy would already belong to them. The young female biologist spoke for the first time, her voice calm but firm. "Maybe it does not belong to them yet." She looked at the human through the glass, her eyes narrowing. But what if they have simply not chosen to take it? The chamber filled with uneasy silence. Every alien felt the chill of her words. They turned their glowing eyes back to the human, still sitting calmly. His wounds should have made him weak, but instead he looked stronger, as if pain had only fed him. That night, the young biologist remained in the lab when the others left. She walked slowly toward the cell where the human rested. The guards were nervous, but she waved them off. The translator orb floated near, catching every sound. The human looked up at her, his gaze sharp, unblinking. For a long moment, neither spoke. Only the quiet hum of the lights filled the air. Finally, she whispered, "Why do you not fear us?" The orb translated, and the human's lips curled into a faint smile. "Because I have faced worse." The alien felt her chest tighten. She wanted to ask what he meant, but something inside her already knew. He was not speaking only of pain or tests. He was speaking of survival, of wars, of a history their science had never studied. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Do all humans endure like you?" The human leaned forward, his chains rattling softly, his eyes locked on hers. "You don't want to know the answer." Her breath caught. A shiver ran down her spine. In that moment, she understood. Her people had captured something far beyond their control. And if the rest of his kind were anything like him, then their empire was already standing on the edge of destruction. The next day, the Council of Scientists met again. Some demanded the human be dissected for secrets. Others begged for his immediate release. But the leader silenced them with a single sentence, his voice hollow. "If word of this spreads beyond this room, the galaxy will never sleep in peace again." But whispers were already moving through the station. Guards spoke in hushed tones, engineers carried rumors, and those rumors would not stop. They would grow, they would spread, and in the heart of every alien who heard them, a secret fear began to take root. A fear that one human, just one, had endured everything they could throw at him. A fear that humanity itself was far bigger, far stronger, and far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. The lab lights dimmed to night mode, but the human did not sleep. His body rested against the cold wall of his cell, yet his mind stayed awake, calculating, watching, waiting. Every sound of boots, every flicker of light from the hallway, he studied it all. The aliens thought the glowing cuffs around his wrists and ankles would hold him forever. They believed their technology was perfect, but the human had grown up in a world where nothing was perfect. He knew that every lock had a weakness, every chain a crack. A guard passed by his cell, yawning, his weapon dangling loosely. The human's eyes narrowed. He noticed the tiny blinking panel on the wall near the cuffs. The energy pulse that controlled them flickered for only a fraction of a second each cycle. It was small, almost invisible, but it was enough. He waited, silent as stone. When the guard disappeared down the corridor, the human pulled hard against the cuffs, timing his strength with the exact flicker of the panel. The cuffs sparked, resisting, but his muscles bulged. Veins straining, the pain was sharp, but he pushed harder, grinding his teeth until the metal cracked with a hiss of energy. One cuff broke free, glowing pieces scattering to the floor. Alarms did not ring. The system thought it was only a small malfunction. The human grinned faintly. His heart pounding, he worked on the second cuff, pulling harder with perfect timing. Another snap, another shatter. Within minutes, he was free. He rose to his feet slowly, his legs stiff from days of testing. His body ached, but his spirit felt alive. The cold floor pressed against his bare feet as he crept to the door. His eyes scanned the alien control panel beside it. Symbols glowed in strange patterns, unreadable to most, but he had been watching for days, memorizing which symbols the guards pressed. He placed his hand on the panel and copied the sequence. The door slid open with a soft hiss. The hallway outside was dim, the hum of machines filling the silence. He moved quickly but quietly. His steps controlled, he hugged the walls, avoiding the glowing cameras that swept across the floor. Further down, two guards stood near a checkpoint, Their tall bodies shifted lazily, talking in low clicks. Their weapons rested against their shoulders. The human picked up a broken shard of metal from the ground. His eyes focused, his breathing steady. He waited for the sweep of the cameras to pass, then he moved like a shadow. He crept behind the first guard in a flash, his arm hooked around the alien's neck. Pulling tight, the guard thrashed, claws scraping the wall. But the human strength was relentless. Within seconds, the alien slumped to the ground unconscious. The second guard turned, eyes wide, but before he could shout, the shard of metal pressed against his throat. The human's voice was low, carried by the translator orb that floated near. "Stay quiet." The guard froze. Trembling, his glowing eyes darted around, but the human's grip was unshakable. Slowly, the human lowered him to the ground, pressing just hard enough to knock him out. 2 guards down, no alarm raised. The human dragged their weapons away and studied them. They were strange, shaped like claws with glowing barrels. He tested the grip, nodded once, and carried one with him. Back in the control room, the scientists stared at their monitors. Unaware of the danger, their screens showed empty hallways, because the human had learned to move between the cameras. But the young female biologist had not gone home. She sat at her station, reviewing the data from his pain test. Her eyes caught something odd, a flicker in the cell's energy field. Her heart skipped. She rushed to the surveillance feed and froze. The human was gone. Her fingers shook as she whispered, "He's free." The other scientists laughed at first, dismissing her, but when they checked the next feed, their faces drained of color. The human was walking calmly through their corridors. Holding one of their own weapons, the alarms finally blared. Red lights flashing across the station. Guards scrambled, shouting orders, but deep inside, every alien felt the same cold dread because this was no longer an experiment. This was a hunt, and for the first time, they were not the hunters. The alarm screamed through the lab, red lights flashing across every corridor. Guards shouted, weapons drawn. Their boots thundered against the floor as they searched. But the human was already moving ahead of them. Fast, silent, unstoppable. In the control chamber, chaos erupted. Scientists yelled at each other. Screens filled with broken feeds. The lead biologist slammed his hands on the table, his glowing eyes wide with rage. "Find him. He cannot be allowed to escape this facility." But the young female biologist stayed quiet. Her heart pounded, her hands trembled. She had known this moment would come. She had felt it since the first time she saw him stare through pain without breaking. She rose from her seat slowly, ignoring the others, and moved toward the secure wing. Her mind was torn in two. One side whispered she should alert the guards. The other screamed she had to see him herself. The human slipped into a maintenance tunnel. His body pressed against the walls. His stolen weapon glowed faintly in his hand. His breath was steady, controlled. He knew the aliens were hunting him, but he also knew their fear was heavier than their courage. Then he heard the soft sound of footsteps, different from the clumsy rhythm of guards. He turned, weapon ready, and there she was, the young biologist, standing at the end of the corridor, no weapon in her hands, only her wide glowing eyes fixed on him. For a long moment, neither moved. The alarms wailed, but in that narrow space, silence pressed between them. "You broke free," she whispered, her voice caught by the translator orb. "I knew you would." The human did not lower his weapon. His voice was calm, steady. "And you came here alone, why?" Her throat tightened, she stepped closer. Slowly, hands raised. "Because I do not believe you are what they say. They call you a specimen, a danger, but I have seen more. I have seen something no data can measure." The human's eyes narrowed, suspicion flickering. "What do you see?" She swallowed, her voice shaking. "Willpower, defiance, spirit. Things our species lost long ago." The human studied her for a moment, his weapon still aimed, then lowered it slightly. His voice was low, firm. "If you believe that, why stay with them?" Her glowing eyes dimmed, filled with shame. "Because I was afraid. Afraid of what happens if you are real. Afraid of what it means for us if all humans are like you. Then our empire is built on a lie." The human's lips curled into a faint, grim smile. "You're not wrong." Behind them, the sound of guards grew louder, heavy boots rushing closer. The biologist turned her head quickly, then looked back at him, her chest rising fast. "I can help you," she whispered. "I know the way out. But you must promise me something." The human's eyes hardened. "And what is that?" She took a step closer, her voice trembling but brave. "Spare me when the others fall. When your kind rises, remember that I stood here. Remember that I chose you." The human stared at her, the weight of her words heavy. His silence stretched until the guard's shouts echoed down the corridor. Finally he spoke, his voice like steel. "Show me the way." She turned quickly, her long fingers pressing hidden panels in the wall. A section slid open, revealing a narrow passage glowing with faint blue light. "This leads to the outer docks," she said. "From there you can reach the launch bays. But you must move fast, they will seal it soon." The human stepped past her, his presence filling the small tunnel. As he moved, he paused, glancing at her once more. "Why risk everything for me?" Her answer came soft, almost broken. "Because for the first time in my life, I believe in something greater than fear." The words struck him, but there was no time to respond. The sound of guards grew closer. Weapons powered up, shouts echoed. The human moved into the tunnel. Weapon ready, the biologist followed, her heart pounding with every step. She knew she had crossed a line. There was no return now. Behind them, the leader's voice rang through the speakers, furious and desperate. "Do not let him reach the docks. If he escapes, the galaxy will never be the same." But it was already too late. The doubt had spread, the fear had rooted deep, and one alien scientist had already chosen the human over her own people. The tunnel stretched on, glowing with faint blue light. The human ran with long, steady strides, the stolen weapon clutched in his hand. Behind him, the young alien biologist followed, her breath sharp, her heart pounding louder than the alarms that echoed through the station. The sound of guards thundered behind them, their shouts mixing with the screech of sealing doors. The station shook as lockdown systems activated, metal walls sliding down, corridors closing. But the human was faster. His mind calculated every step, his eyes scanning for escape. They reached the outer docks, a vast chamber filled with ships of strange design. The air was cold, sharp with the smell of fuel. Sirens flashed red across the walls as squads of guards poured in from the other side. Their weapons glowed, ready to fire. The human did not stop. He raised the stolen rifle and fired. Bolts of light cracked against the metal floor, scattering the guards. They shouted in panic, not expecting their own weapon to be turned against them. He moved with precision, every shot controlled, every step calculated. The biologist ducked behind him, her eyes wide. She had seen soldiers fight before, but nothing like this. Humans did not fight like aliens. They fought like storms with fire in their veins. The leader's voice blared over the speakers, filled with rage. "Do not let him leave. He is not just a prisoner. He is the end of everything we know." But the human ignored the voice. His focus was clear. He charged forward, his muscles burning, his body moving as if the wounds from the tests were nothing but fading scars. He reached the nearest ship, a small craft docked against the platform. He slammed his hand against the controls. Trying to force the door open, the system resisted. Locked down by the station's command, the young biologist rushed to the panel, her fingers flying across the glowing keys. "I can override it," she shouted, "but you must hold them back." The human turned, his eyes narrowing at the wave of guards storming closer. He gripped the rifle tighter, sparks flying as he unleashed shot after shot. The air roared with fire and light. The guards faltered, fear spreading among them. This was no ordinary prisoner. This was no weak creature from a forgotten world. This was something their science could not cage. Finally, the ship's hatch hissed open. The biologist gasped, "Go! It is ready!" The human grabbed her arm and pulled her inside with him. The hatch sealed just as blasts of energy struck against the hull. Shaking the craft, he slid into the pilot's chair. Scanning the alien controls, his hands moved quickly, adapting faster than expected. "How do you know how to fly it?" she asked, her voice trembling. He glanced at her, his lips curling into a faint smile. "I don't, but I'll learn." The engines roared to life, the ship trembling as it lifted off the platform. Guards screamed, firing wildly, but the craft shot forward, breaking through the docking bay doors with a thunderous crash. Sparks and debris exploded into the void as the ship soared into the dark of space. Inside the lab, the remaining scientists stood frozen. Watching the escape on their monitors, the leader's face was pale, his voice broken. "If one human can do this, imagine an army of them." The young biologist sat beside the human, her hands shaking as she looked at him. Her voice came soft, almost reverent. "They will fear you now, all of them, not just my people. But every empire, every council, they will never forget this night." The human leaned back in the chair, his eyes fixed on the endless stars ahead. His voice was calm, steady. Good. Let them fear. Because fear is only the beginning. The translator orb floated silently, repeating his words across the ship in a language no alien could misunderstand. And far behind them, in the heart of the alien station, rumors already spread like fire. Rumors of a prisoner who could not be broken. A human who endured pain, shattered machines, and escaped against impossible odds. The galaxy would carry those whispers. They would grow, they would echo, and soon, the stars themselves would tremble with a revelation that no one could ignore. Humans were not small. Humans were not weak. Humans were far bigger than the galaxy had ever imagined.